So we are back with lesson 2. It's our third and final part of the lesson. So I've pushed our code again to GitHub just before our break. We made a simple category model. So we want to rework this UL that we made, and we want to generate some kind of in-memory data with our model instead, and then pass that data from the model to the controller to the view. So I'm actually going to comment out these 3 li tags that we put in our index method. So the simplest way to do this, you can just highlight it, and you may see already on your toolbar, there's a comment and an uncomment section. So you can click it, or you can simply add the @ and * around it. Visual Studio will color code it in green, meaning it's a comment now. So if I go back to my browser and click the categories link up at the top, I'm now going to get a blank page. It's going to say shop our store, but our list is going to be empty. So now if I click it, those 3 categories, they're hidden. Instead of hard coding those values, we're now going to go back to our categories index method, and we want to use our model to generate 10 categories in memory. And then we can pass that list to the view, and we can display it using a loop. And this is much more similar to how our application is going to work once we put it together with our database. So go to our categories controller, and we're going to modify the index method. So we're going to use the category model to generate 10 categories in memory for display in the view. So I'm going to declare a variable called categories, and it's common in .NET that data types, and you may have talked about this in your C# course last semester, that they are implied. So I can just declare categories as a variable, but if I define it, if I instantiate it as a list, for example, I'm going to make it a list of type category. So the compiler will automatically can infer the data type. So it says this local variable is a list of type category. I can define it this way, like list category. I can be explicit, but I don't really need to. The common practice is just to use var and let the .NET compiler figure it out. This is common practice. Now we do have an error here. Visual Studio is not happy. The word category, our model, is being underlined. And when I roll my mouse over the error, it says the namespace could not be found. So how come? Why do we get this error? Our class is public. Our category class, it is public, yet our controller can't see the model. Why is this error happening? Our model class is public, yet the controller somehow can't see it. No, it's not static. Yeah, Luke, that's right. Notice the namespace. And so in our controller, this file is in the controller's namespace. Our model class is in the model's namespace. They can't see each other. So I could manually add a using statement up here, or I can use the code hinting in Visual Studio, which actually tells me, okay, to fix it, you need to add this reference to the model's namespace. So if I just double click that suggestion, it actually writes the reference on line 6. And now my red underline goes away. The controller is now able to see the model class. So we can add the reference by typing it, or we can just use the code hint, which I think is easier and more accurate. just accept the recommended reference. So we're going to see this all the time through the semester. We're going to make references to things. Visual Studio is saying we can't find a reference, so it's going to prompt us to add a reference to the dependency we need. So now we'll just use a loop. Again, I'll use var. We're going to loop from 1 to 10. And each time we go around the loop, we're going to create a new category object and add it to our list. So we'll call categories.add, and we'll create a new category each time. We'll set the ID equal to our counter variable. So it'll start at 1, it'll go to 10. And the name will be category, and then we'll just append on our counter to string. So instead of just hard coding the links, we're actually making a list of strongly typed objects. And each item in the list has both an ID property that's an integer and a name property that's a string. And now we have to pass the strongly typed data to the view. So this is going to involve making a change here. So line 23, this loads the view. We know this works, but now we need to do something in addition. We need to load the view. Yes, first we've got to load the right view, but then we also want to send our categories variable to the view. So what change do you suppose we should make on line 23? So when the view is loaded, it's also sent the data that it needs. You got it, Ivan. So notice this return view statement, it's overloaded. It says there's 3 overloads. So right now, we're not passing any parameters. So when it's empty, it just creates a view result that renders a view. But the second overload creates a view result and also passes in a data model to be rendered in the view. So we want to pass in our categories list. So rather than using the empty overload with no parameters, we're going to do what Ivan suggested. We're going to use the second overload, the second version of return view that passes in a data model. Okay, I'll leave this code up for a minute. So you'll need the reference on line 6. We're going to create a new strongly typed list. We're going to use a loop to put 10 items in the list. And then when the view loads, we're going to say, here you go. Here's this list that you need to display in the browser. So there's our code. So we're basically working with this process now. Week 1, right? So we get a request that's categories index. So before we load the view now, notice so step 1 is the client sends the URL, the dispatcher hands it to the right controller. So before the controller loads the view, step 3 now is interact with the corresponding model, fetch any data we need is step 4 from the model to go back to the controller, and then we load the view, and we can also pass that data model to the view, which will render in our client device. Okay, so we've added in steps 3 and 4 to the process. So we now need to rewrite some of the code in our index view to work with this data. So we're going to do 2 things in the index view to make this happen. The first thing we're going to declare up at the top is we're going to declare a data model. So I'm going to use @model. So what kind of data is coming in? We're getting data of type category, and we're also getting a list. We're not just passing one category, we're passing a whole list of categories. So we need to indicate both of these things are part of the data model. So we're going to use the IEnumerable keyword. And Visual Studio tells us it exposes an enumerator, which allows us to iterate over a collection of a specified type. And then we need to supply the data type. What kind of collection is this? So it's going to be our project name dot models dot category. So this page receives from the controller a list or a collection that we can enumerate through, we can loop through it, and the data type is category. So now we can rewrite our list item tags and eventually our anchor tags with a loop. So I'll put on a server-side tag with the for each. I'll declare a variable, I'll just call it C. So for each item in our model, we can now add a list item tag. And inside the list item, we can render the current variable, which is called C. And if I hit dot, notice it's strong. My model is strongly typed. So it now recognizes the properties of the category model, right? We've got the category ID, and we want the category name. Now we've removed the links here, but if we try this page out now, we should get a bulleted list from category 1 down to category 10. So let's try that. So now our store is showing the 10 categories that we created in the controller using that category model. So even though we're making the data up in the controller, we're not selecting it out of a database, you can start to see how the model view and controller all fit together now. We use the model to get our data. The controller makes calls to the model, takes data back, and then hands that to the view. The view declares a model, and then we can reference it in our code with our combination of HTML and server-side Razor syntax. So we're almost finished. The last thing missing is we've gotten rid of our anchor tags. So we've got a category list, but it's just a static list now. So the user can't do anything with it. So we want to add back our anchor tags. So I'm going to add back in an anchor with our ASP controller categories. Our ASP action is browse. And our ASP root category is going to be equal to, and now instead of hard coding, we will use our category name. And then inside the link, the text on each link will also be the category name. Adil, I'll come to your question in a moment. Okay, so we're taking the category name, and again, we're wrapping it in an anchor tag, and we're also using the category name as a parameter for the category parameter of our browse method. So this should be complete now. So now each of these is a link again. I can click any one of them. And the browse page shows me my selection. Okay, deal. I will go over Innumerable again. So here's the description. Take a look carefully at what this means. It exposes an enumerator which supports iteration over a collection. So if we want to work with a list of data, the IEnumerable indicates the data for this page is a list. I'll show you the difference between working with a list and working with a single object. Okay. So let's go. Actually here, bear with me for a second. I can open up the code. So I actually use .NET MVC. So the project tracker website that you're using for your assignment. So this page uses an IEnumerable, right? Because it's showing a list of projects, right? If I go to edit a project, this is not using IEnumerable because this is now working with a single project. Okay, so I'll show you the code and the difference between these two views. So I use .NET MVC. So I have a projects controller, which I can open up. So here is the index method. Okay. So the index method fetches a list of projects from the database for the selected class. And then it returns the view and passes in a list of the projects. Okay, you with me so far? So the index view shows the whole list. Okay, good. So let's take a look at the view. If I right click it, let's see, can I go to definition? This might open the view. Nope. So now I'll go to views and projects, and here's my projects index. Okay. So notice at the top, what do you see? IEnumerable. Right? So this page shows a list of projects. And here's my for each loop. Okay? So I want to show all the projects in the list, one at a time. Okay, and then I've added a little logic in the view, right? I use Bootstrap. So if it's approved, it shows in green, and if it's not approved, it shows in red. Yeah, IEnumerable just means it's a list. So this view, my projects index view, shows a list, an IEnumerable of type project. But then I also have this edit view. So let's look at that one just to compare. So in my controller, I have this edit method. So it accepts an ID parameter. If there is a project ID, it queries the database for a single project, right? This isn't a list. We're only editing one project. And if we find a project, it returns the view, but notice it passes in one project. So our index method passed a list, but our edit view passes one project. So Adil, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to open up projects edit. At the top, we're going to see a model of type project. Will the edit view have IEnumerable, or will it not use IEnumerable? It will not. You're right. So notice the model here, it's still a project. You got it. So index is showing a list. So the IEnumerable just indicates this page is getting a list of objects. of this type. But edit, it's using the same model, but there's no IEnumerable. We can even look at a few of the other views, right? When you go to submit a project, so let's look at the model in the view called Project Create. So in Project Create, again, we see the model. This view is tied to a project, but again, no IEnumerable because we're creating only one object. So in each of these, in all of these views, we've also got delete. Again, we're deleting one project. Or on details, we're looking at the details of one project. So we've actually got 5 views here. Create, edit, delete, and details. 4 of them just use the project model. Index is the only one that uses IEnumerable because it's the only one that's working with a list. Okay. So when you do your assignment, it's going to look very similar to this. In Visual Studio, I didn't actually write this code. Visual Studio wrote 95% of it, and I just customized it. Same with these views. I didn't actually have to write all the HTML for these views. Visual Studio actually generates it for me, and I just customize it a little bit. So it's the same with your assignment 2. You don't actually have to write very much of the code or make the views. I'm going to show you how to let Visual Studio automatically generate all this stuff for you. Okay. I think we've done everything I wanted to cover today, which means it's Git changes time. So I'll do lesson 2, part 3. Mock category list using model and IEnumerable. So I'm going to commit and push. Well, that's interesting. Okay. Do a pull and then a push. Oh, whoops, wrong project. That was silly. Worked in my other project. Listen to part 3. Category. Okay, so all the code's on D2L on GitHub. Okay, we're done for today, but you do have 3 things due for Sunday. So number 1, you've got your assignment. 1, 5 easy marks. So submit first on the project website. Probably about half of you have already done this, which is great. Restaurant menu. Great idea. Love that. Great idea, Bree. So submit the document on D2L by Sunday. Quiz 2 in the lesson 3 folder. And the deal, you're going to let me know if the feedback shows up for you or not. Okay? And the last item, there's one other simple thing for you to do. It's worth a few %. So in the lesson 2 folder, again, you have until Sunday to do it. Quick discussion post. So click this lesson 2 learning activity. It's graded. If you're watching the video not on Monday afternoon, you still have to do this. It's worth, I think, 3%, which is easy. 2 quick questions. What was the most useful thing from today's lesson? And what's something you are most interested to learn about the technology based on what we've done in our first 2 lessons? So just start a new thread and tell me what was useful from the lesson. What else do you want to learn about? Okay, so you actually have, between those 3 things, you've got like 8% due by Sunday, but all of it's really easy. You get page not found? Okay. That's odd. It is visible. Oh, sorry. Let me fix this. For some reason, it's locked. Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Jacob. Oh, Mason, like a sentence for each. Don't get carried away. Don't write a book. This was the most useful thing. And yeah, sorry, this should be the 26th. So this was the most useful thing. This is what I'm most interested in seeing. Megan, great question. The answer is yes and no. Technically, you can't have multiple model declarations, but if you want to use multiple models, you can do it this way. You create, where is it? Hang on, Megan, I will show you. I just have to. There is a way to do it. I used to have a diagram here, not sure where it went. So you can do something like this. You can make a view model where you customize, you can combine related data if you need to. Probably beyond the scope of our class, but yes, you can do it. And there's tutorials here on how to do it. So you can actually find this right in the Microsoft Docs. They show you how to do this right here. A little further down. So there's the information about the model, blah, blah, blah. There's stuff about the view model down near the bottom. I think they actually took it out of here. Okay, folks, so that's it for today. So you got 3 things due for Sunday. Please email me if you're stuck with the project idea, and I'm happy to help you. Okay, so next week we're going to work mostly with Razor View syntax, take a deeper dive into that. We're also going to get our database set up and configured, or at least our software configured, so we can start working with the database in week 4. All right, that's all for today. If you need help, I've got office hours tomorrow morning and Thursday morning. You can also send me an email. Let me know if you've got any questions, need any help. Okay, if I don't hear from you, have an awesome week, and I'll see you next Monday.